Yo, what up, and welcome to my May reads. I only have 5 books this time because May was really busy for me. It was really hard to find time to read, but I did manage to read some really fun things and pretty weird things, I guess. Well, yes. Anyway, so the first book I finished in May was Marie-Lou's Warcross. This was recommended to me in Goodreads feed, and it sounded really great. It's about a girl who hacks herself into the biggest game in the world at that time, and then what happens to her. It sounds really good, and it's a bit in the same realm as Ready Player One, besides not including so much 80s trivia. But this book, further and further, when I read it, I found out that it was turning into this really typical young adult romance thing. So the girl who was the main character was supposed to be really kick-ass, but I don't know if she really was. And the main male character was really tsundere, but also kind of into the girl, and then not. And then there was a big secret and a big reveal in the end. And it's going to be a part of, I'm not sure if trilogy, but this was the first book of the series, so it's going to continue. And I'm not sure if I'm going to pick up anything else. I mean, it started out so good. I really liked the world, just like with Red Queen, but then it just, I don't know. Well, probably it is my age. Like, who is going to be interested in young adult romance at my age? But I'm sure other people, young people, still want to read book with a plot, so yeah. But yes, in the end, I think it was a wasted opportunity. Second book was Gideon Smith and Brass Dragon by David Barnett. And it's the second one in Gideon Smith series. I don't have the first one, but it did a pretty good job laying out what was covered in the first one, so I didn't feel like I was out of the loop. How should I describe this? It's kind of like the serial you get in the summer newspapers. So there's always something happening. It's a really short like extract from the book, but lots of things happen during it. The main character himself, Gideon Smith, wasn't that interesting, to be honest. I really saw no I saw nothing that would make his character interesting, but all the side characters were really interesting, and it's really a hodgepodge of all the different things you can find in fantasy, modern history, children's adventure books. I mean, it has. You see Tyrannosaurus Rex fighting a brass dragon, which is an old Egyptian invention that they stole in the first book. And also, there's Western, there's Zorro, well, not a Zorro, but who is supposed to be a Zorro, and there's so much here. There's so much that it's even a bit exhausting to read, in my opinion, but I'm going to read the next one. It's not bad, it's just different. In conclusion, it's entertaining, but it can be a bit tiring. But if you want to have something different and odd and quick to read, then definitely take that with you on a trip or a commute. So the next book that I read is a bit similar because it was a really fast read. is by Nick Hornby and it's called Funny Girl. I actually got it from a friend who was getting rid of it because it didn't really grab her attention when she started reading it. And I came into this book thinking it would be just about this funny girl who gets a TV series in BBC in 60s and then becomes really famous, and it's special in a way that in 60s there weren't many funny girls. Well, there aren't that many funny girls right now as well. It's getting better. But the comedy scene is still very male dominated. But it took me about 80 pages to realize that this book was not based on real events, but it sounded so real. And the dialogue and everything about it, it sounded so true to the era and to these people. They were so well fleshed out that it was very hard for me to believe that they were made up. So I enjoyed it, but I have to say that it was not about the funny girl. It was mostly about these two guys who were writing this TV show for 4 years. And it starts out with Barbara, or Sophie, as she's later called, coming to London and finding a great job, and it's all very centered around her. And then as we get to the TV series, it completely switches and it starts to be more about the writers. The writers are interesting fellows and their own struggles with their sexual identity and the times, and how they have to write about a show that is basically about heterosexual marriage and how these two gay writers deal with it. That's interesting to read, but I mean, it's false advertising in a way, because I would have read it if it was said that it is about the writers, but as you see, there's a girl, there's a title, Funny Girl, and then the whole summary is about Sophie, who comes to London, and then it's not about her. But it was a really good book. I think it took me only about 2 or 3 days to get through it. Now, the next one is, I don't know what it is. Is it a graphic novel? It's Rebel Voices. Whee! Look how big it is. And it's basically an illustrated story about how women all across the world got their voting rights. So it starts with New Zealand. There's this really gorgeous timeline. And I mean, half of the book is really the illustrations. There's not that much new knowledge. Well, there's some new knowledge. It's pretty interesting to see exactly how the story went in different countries. I do feel a bit like, why isn't Estonia included? Because we did get our right to vote pretty early, all the Baltic states, 1920s. So I think we should be included, but well, whatever. Maybe in the next edition. I'm just going through it, trying to find illustration to show you. So this is about Japan. Then there's this really strong one about USA. I hope they will turn out alright. And it's just, I don't know, it's so gorgeous. You just go through it. There's this about China. Let's get something more. What? Egypt. just, it's gorgeous. Nigeria. I would buy it again if it had new pictures, because I want it all. And I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, maybe to read to your children, young children, to show the struggle that women went through throughout the world to get their voting rights. But it's really, I mean, I'm going to put it on my shelf and I'm going to display it because it's just so pretty. It was really a splurge because I wasn't supposed to buy it. It was so much money for, well, I would say so little content, but there's actually a lot of content. But you know, I don't want to pay more than 10 euros for a book usually, so it was twice that. But let's get to the last one really quick. So the last book I read was Fláneuse by Lauren Elkin. I probably pronounced it completely wrong, but it's a women or female form of somebody who walks through the city and just takes in the city, enjoys it. There is no set end point where they want to end up. They're just walking. And I know this has been criticized by the author being a sheltered American who is discovering Europe and making these great discoveries in cities. But I don't know, I kind of liked it. I mean, we all know Americans don't walk, they take their car. But if you live in Europe, you walk a lot, and our cities are made for walking mostly. And they are not laid out in a way that they are in a lot of cities in the United States. But this book is basically her own autobiography, where how she's been living in different cities, how she has felt in those cities, how the city has influenced her. And then there are famous women who walked the cities, not the prostitutes, but who took a stroll in the cities, like Virginia Woolf and George Sand and Agnes Varda and Martha Gellhorn. So there are a lot of interesting women and how their life has been reflected through their walks. So it's well referenced, it's well researched in my opinion, and there's a really interesting feel to it. So I guess if you don't get the feel of it, you won't like it. I would say the mood of it, I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed knowing more about these women who I had not heard about, like Agnes Varda and Martha Gellhorn. I'm not sure whom to recommend it to. Maybe you just have to find this book, feel that it's right, and then give it a go. So these were my books this month. The amount of books I read for June is already more than that, so I'll get back to you. In June, and I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to.